Now to finish up this composite, let's bring in the other water overlay stock images that we have, and then we'll make some global adjustments to the image. So let's take a look here. What we want to do. Okay, let's first bring this image. Now this is just going to act as an overlay like we've done in the past. So I'll put it above everything, and we'll just transform it, scale it up to cover the whole image, and then accept that. You know what, I don't want this water up here to be seen though, so we'll scale it up even more. So these will just look like really big bubbles, which is fine. And let's add a blur to this. So we'll go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, just so it doesn't look at all pixelated. You know what, that wasn't enough. Let's go filter, blur, blur. Let's add a pretty significant blur. Like that. Because this is just an overlay, it doesn't need to look sharp. Now let's change blend mode to soft light, bring the opacity way down. And then let's also add a vibrance effect to this layer, or saturation. Light to that layer. Okay, and now let's bring the opacity down to like 15. Great. Can exit out of that, and let's bring in this image to overlay. Let's transform that, and we could just scale it outward a little bit. We're also going to add a blur to this, so let's go like that. Soft light. Before we do anything, let's not forget to add that blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Okay, then bring the opacity significantly down. And we'll copy that vibrance layer up here as well, so it doesn't affect the saturation or the color of the image. Awesome. Like 21 is good. Go this. Actually don't want to use this one. But I do want to use this one. This is just kind of a cool texture that'll go over everything. So let's scale this up quite a bit. Now let's add a filter to this. Filter, blur, blur. Trying to make sure that in here, because I've scaled it up so much, that it doesn't at all look pixelated. So that's good. Let's bring that desaturation effect onto it. Change the mode to overlay for this one. Awesome. Like that. Now let's take all of these effects and bring them into, we'll just add a new layer group, call it overlay. Now we have that. Okay, so we have our overlays, we have our bubbles, we have Andrew rescue, and we have our background. So those are the 5 main elements of this piece. Now let's add some adjustment layers to this piece as a whole. So first let's go to vibrance and saturation. What I want to do, I think, is to bring the vibrance up and bring the saturation down quite a bit. Like that. Like I want it to be cool and blue, but I don't want it to be too overwhelming. So like I want it to have this cool, slick, like kind of desaturated look. Okay, then we'll add a curves adjustment to this. Lighten everything up a bit. I clicked on auto and that was actually great. That. Lighten it all up. And then, you know what? Now that we've lightened it up so much, let's go back to this vibrance. Let's bring it to full opacity and bring the saturation even a little further down. Okay, good. Now the last step is to go ahead and crop the image. So we want to match it to that background layer. Okay, and then actually, you know what, to make this more easy to work with, let's make sure it's like a standardized size. Oh, I like that. As I'm looking at this, there's one thing I want to do. I think I want to blur the background a bit. Oops. Yeah. Let's go 5x7. Okay, I like that. Now let's go to, this is done loading, let's go to the background. And what I'll do is I'll duplicate this layer, add a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Like that. Then I'll add a layer mask to this and invert it and paint in, because I only want like this bottom area to be blurred, so something like that. Maybe like around the edges. Okay. Wonderful. Great. Now let's go ahead and save this. So say File, Export, Export As. Go to JPEG and click Export. And now we have finished our third and final project for this course.